Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's executive meeting. As you'll be aware, there's a different person in the chair this evening. The Leader of the Council will be joining us later, but I will be in the chair for tonight's meeting. So, first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Ms Willis, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Lily-Anne McIntyre sent her apologies, and as you just mentioned, the leader will be joining us later.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. They've been circulated. Are members of the committee happy to agree to the minutes? Agreed. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest with respect to the matters which are being considered at this meeting? No? Okay. Item 4, public question time. I don't believe we've received any questions submitted by members of the public under the Constitution. Okay. And okay, item number 5, questions by members. Do we have any questions? Councillor Rowlands.
There's a great deal.
So, sorry, Councillor, could you just pop your microphone? And just before, I did just want to make one point before, if you just give me, well, I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Rowlands. I do want to make sure that I'm going to allow one question at a time. I will allow members to come back in afterwards, but I don't want multiple questions asked in one go. One question at a time, so either myself or the portfolio holder can answer. Thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
Yes, reading on in the agenda, there's quite a bit of material on possible strategic changes in the borough involving this complex. Just a question whether has the council made a decision about changing the structure of this area? Has that decision already been made? Because looking at the very detailed work that's gone on in relation to this site, the question arises, has the actual decision been made that we might be changing the structure of this site in any drastic way?
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. That will, comes under a local plan question, so I'm going to ask Councillor Ashbury to answer that question.
Thank you for your question. In terms of decisions about any of the site and change of use, my understanding is they are being explored, but nothing has yet been decided. The work that has been ongoing, particularly for Camberley Town Centre for the local plan, has been viability work on whether or not we can bring forward some of the sites that have been proposed to satisfy our housing needs between now and 2038, the timing of the local plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler, your hand went up, please.
It did indeed. Thank you. As some people may well be aware, Surrey County Council agreed today for the establishment of a joint health overview and scrutiny committee for Frimley Park Hospital, which consists of 4 members from Surrey, 4 from Hampshire and 2 from Bracknell Forest. Members with residents impacted, county members with residents impacted by the potential move of the hospital are invited to attend the meeting as non-voting members. The legislation under which this comes is Regulation 13, and it goes on to say that only the Joint Committee may respond to the consultation, i.e. rather than each individual local authority responding separately. Only the Joint Committee may exercise the power to require the provision of information by the relevant NHS body, and only the Joint Committee may exercise the power to require members or employees of the relevant NH body or health service provider to attend before it to answer questions. I am concerned that as a borough whose residents will be most impacted by the Frimley Park new hospital site, that we will have no voice and no opportunity to formally engage. Could either the portfolio holder for this area or the leader please confirm what steps the borough is taking to ensure that we have a view of what is happening and a voice within these meetings, and to make sure that our residents are kept informed? I am pleased to note that the County Councillor representing Windlesham and Chobham is one of the voting members of the newly formed committee. The hospital must be built by 2030, and it will follow a standard design, Hospital 2.0, across all of the trusts that have been granted the fund for the new hospital. What assurance can be given, please, to our residents that we will engage effectively with County to make sure that we have a voice with the new hospital build? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. If you just bear with me one moment. I'm just going to invite the Chief Executive to respond to the question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I've not seen the County Council's announcement today, so thank you for highlighting that. We'll certainly follow up and have a look. Councillor Wheeler is right. We have a councillor on this committee that's appointed to the Frimley Park Hospital Council. That's Councillor O'Mahony. So he is our point of contact on discussions and progress with all matters to do with the hospital, including progress with identifying a new site. I know that the leader of the council has contacted the hospital on several occasions, and I have joined the leader of the council in meetings with their chair of their board and their chief executive, and we're in the process of arranging a follow-up meeting. So there is regular contact between the council at the appropriate levels to discuss these matters, and any feedback that we get will be shared more widely with members and with residents as appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Executive. Just to respond, I'm just going to make a point. I wasn't aware of the announcement. I'll take this away and I'll discuss this with the leader of the council, just to make sure that this council, in any way possible, is feeding into that body as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand from the...
Thank you. Councillor, I will come back to you, please. Is this on that very same point?
It is, yeah.
Okay, briefly, please.
Just to say that according to County, any member whose residents are impacted can attend that meeting, but not take part in the voting. I would strongly recommend that as a borough, we write to the chair of that committee and ask to be able to attend.
Thank you for that point. Well taken, and I will make sure that the leader of the council is aware of that as well. Any questions? Councillor Hode.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about broadband. I think we'd all agree that access to good quality, reliable broadband is a key element of the infrastructure that our residents here in Surrey Heath need for modern day living, in particular those that work from home or have families. In my particular ward, Lightwater, about half our residents do not have that. They have no access to high-speed broadband. Some years ago, Virgin did start installing that in the village, but for reasons I won't go into, they pulled out about halfway through and made it clear that they would not be coming back. My fellow councillor in Lightwater, Councillor Kevin Thompson, and I have done quite a bit of work looking at potential service providers for high-speed broadband. We found that BT Openreach has a plan to install in the Lightwater and Bagshot area based on the Bagshot server, whatever system, as part of their upgrade plan. And I've had quite a conversation with their team to get more details. What I understand is that Lightwater currently is expected to see installation starting in the next couple of months, with installation hopefully complete by the end of 2026. So it is quite a long period of time. That's the good news, is that BT Openreach have got us clearly on their radar, but obviously plans can change, sometimes operational necessity, sometimes priorities change, other communities make more noise and look more attractive. So I'd like to ask, if possible, that we ensure that Openreach understand that demand from Lightwater is strong, so we don't see our installation being shunted back and other areas reprioritised. I'm going to continue encouraging Lightwater residents to contact Openreach to lobby hard, but I'd like to ask whether I could get the support of the leader of the council, or in his absence, the deputy, and ask you if you could contact senior staff at Openreach and reiterate the importance of this infrastructure to our village and to press for more details and a clear and fixed rollout plan that they could perhaps share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hode. I'm not to speak for the leader of the council, but as the third Light Water councillor, I'm sure he's very acutely aware of the need for broadband in his ward and your ward as well. I'm happy to take that away. I'm happy to say that the council would definitely support the residents in requesting that information, and I'll pass that information on to the leader to ask him to write to BT to get that request through.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. This borough has a historic and proud connection to the armed forces. We've been proud to host them, and we all owe them a debt of gratitude for their service and keeping us safe. So it's very welcome that the council is going to be signing the Armed Forces Covenant. Can perhaps the portfolio holder tell me how the council is going to be marking that occasion? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Finan Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Wilson. The signing of the Armed Forces Covenant is taking place at a ceremony tomorrow, and there will be attendees from the Armed Forces, from the staff, councillors from all the political parties and the Mayor. We have a bit of a challenge as we're in the pre-election period, and therefore we can't use council officers or communications to influence voters in any way for any political gain. And so our communications around it, unfortunately, at this point, will be somewhat muted. However, once the election period is over, we'll be launching a new page on our website with details of the covenant, the objectives of it, and the action plan surrounding it, and a host of resources which are put in place to support armed forces personnel and their families, and to regularly update any progress as things develop. We'll be reporting to the Engaging Communities Working Group to ensure the councillors have strategic oversight. And we're very much hoping to have a further event around Armed Forces Day in the summertime, which will be much more widely publicised. Okay.
Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Chair. Were he here, I was going to ask the leader about the very interesting report he presented prior to this meeting of the County Council representatives, or there's working people working in the borough on various community projects. But the shame, it seems that there's no direct linking process on what these young ladies are doing. I think we had a discussion whether it's 2 or 3 at the moment, and linking into this borough's priorities. There's a list of the activities they're involved in, but they seem to be out there somewhere, but not necessarily linked into possibly the objectives of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. I'm assuming that you're talking about the community link officers. Are you talking about the community link officers?
Yes.
That form County Council?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what report you are referring to, but I can ask the leader to make a further statement or update at a future executive meeting where he'll be able to answer that question for you.
What in his report are what these 2 or 3, we had a discussion about this, young ladies are doing, but it's not very clear where they integrate with the work of this council.
I think it's important to note that they are county council employees, and they are essentially delivering on the priorities and objectives of the county council. I would hope that there would be cross-working and that they are able to they would kind of tie in with the objectives of the borough council as well. But I would point that they are county council objectives. Councillor Finan Cook, do you have anything to add on this?
I don't have much further to add other than to say that Ms France is in contact with our link officers on a regular basis, and we do try and support their work and promote their work as much as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Finan Cook. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Item number 6, local development scheme. Councillor Ashbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, local authorities are required to produce a local development scheme which sets out the future planning documents that the council will produce in the coming 3 years. The proposed local development scheme in the report focuses on the preparation of the new Surrey Heath local plan. The scheme set out in March 23 stated that the proposed publication of the Regulation 19 local plan would take place in November 2023. However, as previously agreed, this was delayed to enable more work on the viability of a number of sites to be concluded. So this latest timetable now proposes publication of the Regulation 19 plan in summer this year with a view to submitting for examination during winter 2024, early 25.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Do we have any questions, comments, observations? No? Okay. So, my apologies. Councillor Wheeler, please.
Sorry, I'm not as fast with Zoom as I am with Teams. It's whichever one we get most used to, isn't it? I would just like to understand the confidence that we have in actually sticking to this time plan, and whether or not a general election later this year is likely to throw this time plan out in any way, or whether it can be sustained irrespective of that event.
Councillor Ashby, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Wheeler. In terms of confidence in the plan, now that we have the viability work finished or very nearly finished, that delayed the work we were doing last autumn, we're more confident in the plan. This is planned to be discussed at tomorrow evening's local plan members working group in further detail. In terms of an election, sadly, we are not in control of election periods. Depending on when an election is called, if it happens to coincide with when we wish to publish the Regulation 19 consultation, that would have an impact and could potentially delay that. Let's hope that the government call a general election sooner rather than later so that it doesn't impact our local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Just a question from me, just to confirm that the local development scheme has gone through local plan working group quite rigorously, hasn't it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the local plan working group have been through this timetable at a previous meeting in January.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we have a recommendation. The executive is advised to resolve that Roman numeral small I, the Surrey Heath Local Development Scheme LDS attached to Annex 1 covering the period 2024 to 2027 be agreed and published on the website. Are we agreed? Oh, sorry. My apologies. I had moved to the recommendation, but I will take it back. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I hope you don't need to repeat it all. I had raised a question earlier, which I'd not had a response to officers concerning some of the special areas of design. So the special planning design guides. To my mind, there are a couple that are missing from here. One is the wooded landscape area, and the other is the Chobham Conservation Area that had previously been considered. So I'm a little bit concerned that we go ahead at this point with that when I haven't had a response. The question went through a few days ago for a response back on that. It may well be, and I would be really happy to be reassured that those design areas and those special design areas have now been incorporated within the policies within the new local plan. But I would be grateful for that assurance, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I don't want to stray into discussions on local plan policies, but I have heard you, the head of planning has heard your comment, and Jane Reeves is also on the call. I can give you an assurance that officers will get back to you in the appropriate time. I can give that assurance, and Mr. Chinya has nodded his head that he will get back to you on that point. Thank you.
I'm just more concerned that we go ahead with this and those policies aren't in there, that's all.
As I said, I don't want to get in. We're only agreeing the timetable for as set out in the agenda paper. This is not a discussion on the policies of the local plan. That would come later. I can give you the assurance that you will get a response to your emails. The head of planning has nodded his head, and I think I just saw Jane Reeves nod her head as well. There will be a response to you, so I think that answers that question. So before I move to the recommend, are there any other questions? Okay, go back to the recommendation that I read out. Are the executive happy to agree that recommendation? Thank you. Agenda item 7, Local Authority Housing Fund. Councillor Fanning-Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a continuation of a scheme introduced by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities in late 2022 to source accommodation for families and individuals fleeing conflict and persecution, largely from Afghanistan, but also from the Ukraine. The previous scheme, LAHF1, was intended to bring forward these properties through £500,000 of funding for local authorities, with Surrey Heath agreeing to secure 7 properties as part of the scheme. LAHF2, only £250,000 nationally, seeks a lower figure of 2 properties, which is based on the calculated need within the borough. Both properties are proposed to be 2 or 3 bedroom properties, with confirmed funding of £400,000 being available towards securing these 2 properties. This includes costs such as conveyancing, refurbishment and furnishing as necessary. We're proposing to continue our partnership with Mount Green to deliver these properties, and on a very positive note, there is no contribution required by Surrey Heath from its Affordable Housing Community Infrastructure Levy funds as there was in the previous year. Whilst these properties are initially dedicated to the resettlement scheme set out in the report, after the first occupation of an eligible family, these properties can then come forward for allocation to families as part of our wider allocation scheme for social housing. That's it. The recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Councillor Fanning-Cook. Do we have any questions or comments or observations from members of the committee or other members?
No, Chair.
Oh, you're all being very quiet tonight. Okay, so I'm going to move to the recommendation. I'm not going to read this one fully out. So the recommendation is laid out in the agenda paper, and I'll ask the executive to resolve that both small Roman numeral I and Roman II are agreed. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 8, local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for Surrey Heath. Councillor Ashbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. So Surrey Heath Borough Council have been working with Surrey County Council to produce a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for the borough. This has involved consultation with affected groups, and phase 1 feasibility studies have been completed for 20 aspirational cycle corridors and 11 core walking zones. This proposal now seeks to endorse the phase 1 work of the local cycle and walking infrastructure plan and enable the phase 2 feasibility work to commence on the shortlist of 6 cycle routes and 4 core walking zones as detailed in the report. The funding for both phases of the feasibility study has already been agreed at executive on the 16th of November 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Again, any questions? Observations? No? Oh, Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for this report. It really is excellent. I'm so pleased there's so much of it planned for my ward as well. Cycle routes from Bagshot to Camberley and Bagshot to Windlesham, which will link Windlesham all the way through to Camberley. and also the walking zone in Bagshot High Street. I've had residents, just before this was published actually, I've had residents get in touch with me about cycle safety, particularly between Windlesham and Bagshot using New Road, which is planned for a phase 1 cycle route. So they were really pleased to see this report, which I shared with them the other day. The question they came back to me with was, will these cycle routes actually be high quality and safe for people like children and less proficient cyclists? Or will they just be like a painted line at the side of the road that we've got on the A30 going through my ward, where debris gets swept off the road by traffic and cyclists have to cycle through it, they have to cycle over drain covers and things like that. And their opinion is that's really not a safe way to create a cycle route. So can you give any assurance about the quality of the cycle routes? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilson. The basic design principle of the cycleways is that the cycleways should be coherent, direct, safe, comfortable and attractive in the first instance. And where feasible, they will always look to have cycleways which are not shared with either pedestrians or with vehicular traffic. Where this is not possible, there will be, on very rare occasions, need to look at other options such as traffic calming to increase the safety for the cyclist. But in the first instance, the safety of the cyclist is paramount. So in terms of the final width and geometry of the cycle paths that are proposed, we're not yet at that level of design. This paper just proposes the general areas and the routes that are proposed. The next stage of feasibility will then take into account where we can have single-use tracks, mixed-use tracks, and on very rare occasions on carriageway cycle paths. But safety is the paramount interest in developing these tracks.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Wheeler, I did see your hand go up and then go back down. Was that intentional?
It was, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, just one for me. Just with the recommendations that are coming forward tonight, this is just for us to endorse phase 1, isn't it? It's not committing any money, it's just endorsing that so that the project can move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is correct. The money for both phase 1 and phase 2 was committed back in 2021. This is just endorsing the fact that phase 1 has finished and agreeing with the recommendation to take the 6 cycle and 4 walking routes to phase 2 feasibility.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody? No? Okay. So we're going to move to the recommendation. So the recommendations are set out on page 37 of the agenda pack, and the executive is advised to resolve Roman numerals I, and III. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, Community Hub, exploring options. Councillor Finan-Cook, I believe it's you.
Thank you, Chair. It is an essential part of our new council strategy and our drive to balance our medium-term financial plan that we carefully review proposed projects to ensure that they're financially sustainable, will promote healthy and inclusive communities and are fair. When reviewing the options for a proposed community hub, which had been originally proposed prior to the pandemic, this criteria was very much in our thinking. In order to properly explore options, officers worked to understand the original vision for the hub, establish demand from third sector partners, identify who might use it and whether it would be accessible across the borough to those who most needed it. The initial outcomes from that exploration piece is contained within the paper. We know that accessibility to community information has changed since the original vision 4 years ago, with more people, including older people, becoming comfortable and indeed in some cases preferring online and self-service options, better data and information sharing practice and skill between the organisations, improved social media and a reduction in travel into town centres. We also know that by locating a community hub within the town centre, this will take up commercial space that might generate an income to the council, which is an important consideration in a time of focus on financial sustainability to maintain or improve discretionary services. The ability of residents within our villages to access a town centre hub is also a consideration. Surrey Heath House is part of the local plan. However, whilst we expect to move away from it at some point in the future, firm proposals have yet to be agreed. As the development of communication and engagement channels is a fast-paced changing piece, it would seem sensible, therefore, to link the development of a community hub to the move from Surrey Heath House, at which point we can consult with current partners and residents about what they most need in terms of working and communicating physically with the council and in the same space and with other third sector providers. Excuse me. Resources to further explore options have not been budgeted for in this financial year, and investment would be needed to really develop this idea further. For these reasons, whilst the concept of a physical community hub in the town centre appears to be an attractive proposition, I'm recommending to the Executive that this work is paused pending further decisions surrounding Surrey Heath House, and that once those have been made, engagement with stakeholders and residents take place as part of that move. I would ask the Executive to consider these recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Fryden-Cook. Members. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I know this has been going on for a few years, and I had conversations on it previously. And it's a really good idea, and I know why it's been paused, but the question is, do the people that we're trying to organise it for really want this? And I don't know that they, in all cases, do. I think what all of them want is different, and it's not all the same. So I don't know if there's any other, and I know the need is there, so I'm just wondering if there's any other way we can support them with coming up with a way of supporting them that means maybe it's not the hub, but it's some other way of doing that, because I appreciate that some might want a cafe, but some may not. Some want meeting rooms and some may not. So I get the idea. I think it's a really good idea, but I'm wondering if this is the right solution, if that makes sense.
Councillor Fryden-Cook.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I feel like you could probably answer this question yourself, having been around for the previous administration and understanding the conversations and the development of the concept at the time. What I would say is I agree with the points that you're making. I think in theory the idea is good, but I think that we need to really have some strong dialogue with our partner organisations to see how we can make that work so that it's beneficial for all. And I think that the original idea we've just moved beyond that. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that we continue the dialogue, we try and explore ways further. There may be, I mean, we've had some ideas, and I must thank former Councillor Rodney Bates, because he emailed me on this matter, and he himself had some good suggestions for us to consider, and with the officers we'll go through that. But it may be that we can put together a different idea when budget allows. And we can ensure that we have a support package around our partner organisations when we can. That's the key.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to the recommendation. The recommendation is on page 45. And the Executive is advised to resolve on the two small Roman numerals of I and II. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, task and finish group terms of reference for petition review of Wellington Park Tree Preservation Order. Councillor Ashby, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So following the debate and the acceptance of the petition to review the Wellington Park Tree Preservation Order at full council on the 21st of February, it was agreed to set up a task and finish group to carry out a review. The terms of reference for the task and finish group are detailed in this report, and the aim is for the group to report back to the Executive at its meeting in June. As stipulated in the report, the group will be chaired by myself, and we'll include the author of the original petition, Councillor Johnny Cope, with the remaining 3 councillors to be Councillor Bob Rakes, Councillor Jacques Olmo and Councillor Pat Tedder.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Councillor Cope?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone who's already put in some work to make this a reality. I just had one question on the report that would be useful to get an answer to before this group first meets, and that's the reference to a potential budgetary pressure of 40,000 to review 1 TPO. I'd quite like to see a breakdown of how that figure was arrived at in due course, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Councillor Cope. I think if you go into detail of what we're trying to do on the task and finish group, one of the things is we need to establish what the actual cost is likely to be. I think the 40,000 was an initial estimate. I think it is our job to carry out the review as detailed and to cost it out in terms of officer time and any other costs, particularly given that this is an unbudgeted activity that we will have to find money to do. So I think that's a rough estimate. I think part of our job on the task and finish group is to come up with a realistic number.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, moving to the recommendation, which is on pages 51 and 52. I'll ask, the executive is advised to resolve Roman numeral I, and I. That will be agreed. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 11, which is the revenue budget monitoring of Q3. I believe Councillor MacDonald is handling that one for us. Are you ready?
I am, thank you, Chair. I think the report speaks for itself, so it's really whether there's any questions that flow from that, particularly after the P&F review that's already occurred. So, open to the floor.
Thank you. Members? Councillor Cope.
Yeah, it was just a quick one that jumped out at me at the bottom of page 75 in Legal Democratic Services. It refers to a £40,000 overspend on printing. That sounds to me like quite a lot of printing, so I was hoping to get some detail on what that related to.
Monitoring officer, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Cope. So we had additional printing costs due to the countermanded poll. So we had an additional election and needed to run that separately. So it relates to predominantly that.
Thank you, Mr. Ramtol. Any other questions? No? Okay. So, bear with me, sorry, I went to the page and I've lost the recommendation. So the recommendation on page 67, the executive is advised to resolve Roman numeral I and II. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, capital budgeting and monitoring, Q3. Councillor MacDonald, please.
Same speech as last time. Welcome any questions from anybody. The report is what it says. Yeah. And Mr. Watson is here to help me should the need arise.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Any questions, members? Nope. Okay. So moving on to recommendation, page 79. The executive is advised to resolve Roman numeral I and II on page 79. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 13, report of the External Partnerships Select Committee. Bear with me just one moment. So this came to us, I think, Councillor MacDonald, are you going to handle this one or do you want me to?
wasn't planning to, Chair.
That's fine,
but,
fine.
Always welcome new,
So,
new development
it's,
opportunities.
It's very straightforward. So this is a recommendation that has come to the executive from the External Partnerships Select Committee following its consideration of an item in relation to the odour pollution at Camberley Sewage Works, which was held at its meeting on 28th of November 23. I think the paper sets out very clear. It's asking the executive to, and when I say the executive, I think it's asking the leader of the council to write to the Secretary of State for DEFRA and to our Member of Parliament, highlighting the need for better regulation of water companies and essentially potential more enforcement powers for local authorities. As a portfolio holder, early responsible for this, it was very frustrating and difficult with the limited amount of powers that a local authority has to deal with a water company. And I will now open this up to members if there are any questions. Councillor Rowlands, please.
Chairman, the situation has changed pretty drastically because there have been reports that the Thames are probably going into administration next month. Seems very authoritative reports. It therefore seems probably that our attempts to actually recover some money from them might be at the line of a fairly large, another group of creditors who are lining up, who probably have more power and muscle than we have. Have the council really considered how this changes the situation and what the advice we have, what action we might take in the situation?
There's been regular communications between the Chief Executive and Leader of the Council with both Thames Water and our Member of Parliament on this issue, and I do believe that the Leader of the Council is meeting with the Member of Parliament next week, this week, my apologies, this week, where this will again be raised. The fate of Thames Water is obviously something that we cannot control in Surrey Heath, and as you set out, Councillor Rowlands, we are likely to find ourselves at the back of a very long queue if it does go into administration. However, I do want to commend the work that the ward members have done, as well as the Leader of the Council and the Chief Executive, in holding Thames Water to account and continuing to push them to live up to their commitments that they made with regards to a financial contribution. But unfortunately, I think there's not much that we can do as a council apart from continuing to hold Thames Water to account and press them for the commitments that they've made. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to add anything else?
I think you've summarised it very well, Chair, but I think just to add, so thanks for raising it, Councillor Rowlands. I think it's a valid point. We will be very much at the back of that queue in terms of any creditors with respect to Thames Water. All we can do is continue to raise our concerns, but I think this particular report says that we should write to say that regulation needs to be changed so that local authorities can intervene in some of these areas, particularly in this case where obviously it was air pollution that wasn't really covered to a sufficient degree under the giving local authorities sufficient powers. But equally, looking at a scenario where a utility company of the scale of Thames Water goes bust, one has to question the financial regulation around these quasi-monopolies as well that's been left in place by the government.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Any further from members? No. Okay.
Chairman,
Councillor Rowlands, please.
Just to say, I mean, it's a sort of bleak scenario if the situation of, if their financial situation is so drastic. That is, that area is part of my ward. There are all sorts of questions of maintaining a fairly noxious and difficult environmental circumstance. I mean, is there any mileage in, I mean, obviously keeping ourselves posted on what exactly is happening and what is being said at the time. I understand that another part of Surrey has a similar sort of problem, whether we might look for support to try and get some more direct observations on it. My understanding is only taken from the popular prints, but out there must be some more detailed analysis of the situation we're finding ourselves in.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Monitoring Thames Water's financial stability or instability is not really a responsibility of this council. Yes, we would keep up to date with it because they're a major external partner of this council. Well, they're a organisation within this borough that we deal with. If they are to go administration, I would find it highly unlikely that everything would just grind to a halt at the sewage plant in Camberley, because Thames Water, as we know, is the country's largest water company. I doubt the government is going to allow everything to stop and we'll all be without water. So I would expect that if Thames Water were to go into administration or to go bankrupt or whatever, there would be some form of government intervention. However, that is not a responsibility of this council, and I would not want officers to be spending time trying to monitor or whatever when there are other priorities that we're trying to deliver. I understand the point you're making. We will continue to monitor it, especially with regards to environmental health. Our environmental health team do monitor, and they have been, as you know, incredibly proactive. However, with regards to the financial situation that Thames finds itself in, it's not something that we are able to, it would be counterproductive for us to try to get involved. Okay. Anything else, members? No more questions. Okay, I'm going to move on to the recommendation then, which is on page 87, which I've essentially read out. I'll read it again. The Executive is advised to resolve that a letter be written to Ofwat, the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and Surrey Heath MP, highlighting the need for better regulation of water companies in relation to air and land pollution, including the potential for additional enforcement powers for local authorities. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. So, moving on to agenda item 14, just before we move on to which is the write-off of irrevocable bad debts. Before we go on to this, I just want to point out to members that there is a part 2 aspect to this item. If members wish to speak about anything that's in part 2, we would have to go into part 2 into closed session. However, we are able to resolve this item in public if we don't address anything in the annex. So if I believe that you are going towards the annex, I will stop you and I will remind that we'll have to move into part 2. Councillor McDonald, is this you? I haven't prepared for this one, but...
I think it is, yes. I open the floor to any questions from members.
Councillor Garrett.
I think I could do this without going onto it, but having been in a situation before, so if I point you to a page, I think one of my first questions is some of the debt seems to be 2021 and earlier. So my question is, why is it so old? Okay, and I have another question, and it's related to, and I will refer to a page rather than anything else because it will become clear. Page 100 of, which is obviously Annex C, because of the establishment that's being mentioned and the amount that's being mentioned, it's interesting that it's refuse recycling, uneconomical to investigate further. Now, there's a number of those on that page, and also on page... there's another one where there's the same establishment as mentioned. I'm just intrigued as to, and if we can do that in this part, I can understand, that would be really helpful. What is it that actually relates to? Refuse and recycling, uneconomic to investigate further.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. We can, as long as we're keeping it.
I was trying my very best.
I think this is best for Mr. Watson to answer, if he is so willing.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. The first question, I think, was why there's some debts that are so old in there. We'll only bring this report forward requesting write-off when we've exhausted all avenues of trying to recover the money. So in some of these cases, we've been trying to find the individuals, pursue the individuals, and in most of these, we'll actually have found them and realised that we cannot then pursue the debt anyway. So that's why there's some different timescales on them. They're not all from this year. The ones you refer to, and I won't give the details, are ones where potentially, having looked into it, we are unable to prove the debt through the invoices that we've had. So we can't confirm, A, if they originally were right debts, or B, they may have paid them anyway and not be able to trace them going back that far. So that's why they're in there, to bring them down. So this is a tidying up exercise for the end of the year to make sure we've taken off all those potential liabilities and debts that we are not able to recover.
Councillor Garrett.
So just a follow-up question to that, because on page 102, there are similar establishments where there is a similar note. A lot of these establishments being the same type of establishment. Is there an issue which we need to address? I mean, line 3 and 4 on page 102, and then both the lines on 100 are both the same establishment. So, and it seems to be the same problem. So is there a problem we need to address in some way?
Mr. Watson.
Thank you very much again. These are very old debts. Now, the reason why some are on one page, some on the other page is the amount, where they can be written off under delegation or need to come to the executive for right of approval. Hence why you've got some on each of the pages in the appendices. But they are for the same reason. It's really a service that's been provided, or we think was provided by the council, but we haven't got the evidence now to confirm it was provided or whether they have or haven't paid. So again, it's just clearing those records down, otherwise they'll sit there for time immemorial.
Councillor MacDonald.
Could I just build on Councillor Garrett's excellent question, Mr. Watson, which is to say, are there further debts in the pipeline for these types of establishment that might come to fruition in the years ahead? Because that would then say there's a systematic issue potentially with those types of establishments, which I think is where he was coming from.
At this point in time, I don't believe there is. I think these have been so old, and anything that's more recent of these type of debts will have been pursued through the correct invoicing and chasing procedures. It's just we haven't got the records that we can find going back that far to clear them down.
Thank you, Mr. Watson and councillors. Members, any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move to the recommendation. Oh, Councillor Wheeler, please. Sorry, I did.
Sorry, I am trying to get my hand up as quickly as possible. I hope that doesn't sound inappropriate. My question is whether or not this represents an increase or a decrease in the recovery of debts of this kind over in comparison to 12 months ago.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wheeler, Chair. I thought we had somewhere in this report put in what the previous figures were. I will double check. But if not,
it's anecdotal, Mr. Watson, but there seemed to be an awful lot more whereabouts not known.
So if you look at paragraph 1.7, it does state the total that was written off in previous years, I think. But I'll double check. But if what, I can give you the information for what was previously written off anyway.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. It's just really is it big, or although it tells us what's been in. So it is basically then looking at that about £100,000 more than previously. Is that right?
Mr. Watson, just looking at his papers, Councillor Wheeler, if you just bear with us for one moment.
Apologies, I'm just trying to track the figures down. I will provide a summary on the council tax and business rates of the debts that were last year and for this year, which I can give us writing after this meeting. In terms of the sundry debts, because of the nature of the debts are different, it would be hard to have a direct comparison between the types of debt anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. So just to clarify, we'll get back to you within 5 working days with that, with a clearer answer for you, Councillor Wheeler. Any other questions? No. Okay. So moving to the recommendation, which is on page 89. For this one, I'm going to read out because it's got figures. So the executive is advised to resolve that bad debts in respect of council tax for £130,393.93, and those in respect of business rates for £160,983.92, totalling £291,377.85, be approved for write-off. That bad debts in respect of sundry debts for £3,320.20 be approved for write-off. The removal of 10 housing and sundry debts totalling £5,343.26 that has been carried out under the scheme of delegated authority by the Strategic Director of Finance and Customer Services be noted, as the debts are no longer recoverable under the Limitation Act of 1980. We would just confirm that's updated in the recommend in the minutes. The write-off of 58 sundry debts totalling £27,322.86, which are individually below £1,500, carried out under the scheme of delegated authority by the Strategic Director of Finance and Customer Services be noted. And 5B, that bad debts in respect of 15 property debts totalling £338,115.24 be approved for write-off. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And that, we were able to get through that last one without going into part 2, so I will bring the meeting to